I want you to like imagine a highly specific and honestly a deeply unsettling scenario.
Okay.
You're just going about your normal day, Maybe you're walking down a familiar street, sitting at your desk, or even just looking in the bathroom mirror.
Right. Just
No,
totally mundane, everyday stuff.
exactly. And suddenly, without any warning at all, you feel like you are floating entirely outside of your own body.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you're watching your life happen like a movie played out by this character that just happens to look exactly like you, but it doesn't feel like you.
That sounds terrifying.
It really is. Or perhaps the shift happens in the environment around you. The world suddenly goes foggy, everything feels dreamlike, artificial, and just completely unreal.
Like you've stumbled onto a movie set or something.
Yes, like a movie set where the paint is peeling, the props are hollow, and nothing around you has actual physical substance.
It is a profoundly isolating experience. I mean,
Yeah.
for the person going through it in that exact moment, it feels like the fundamental laws of physics and consciousness have just vanished right beneath your feet.
Right.
You look at your own hands, and they don't look like they belong to you.
Right.
You hear your own voice, and it sounds like it's coming from a speaker across the room.
And the wildest part about this, you might be sitting there listening to this right now thinking, wait, I have felt that.
Yeah, it's more common than people think.
You might have felt it once during a panic attack, or, you might be living with it every single day. So, welcome to today's deep dive. Our mission today is to pull the curtain back on a document titled Navigating Dissociation, Coping and Healing from Unreal Experiences. And we're also going to explore the specific, highly accessible resources offered by coping and healing counseling. We are looking at a phenomenon that people often suffer with in silence for years, literally years.
Because they're terrified to tell anyone.
Exactly. Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because demystifying this feeling, understanding the actual biology of what is happening in your brain, well, that's step one to taking your life back.
Having a clinical framework to understand it changes absolutely everything.
Oh, so-
Well, when you're experiencing this profound disconnection, your mind instantly goes to the worst-case scenario. You think, I am losing my mind. I am going crazy.
Which makes total sense when you feel like you aren't real.
But you aren't going crazy. This is surprisingly common, and it is a known, documented biological and psychological response. When we can actually name the mechanics of what is happening, we strip away the terror.
So let's give it a name. Let's break down the vocabulary of the unreal. What is actually happening when the world turns into a movie set?
So we are talking about depersonalization, derealization disorder.
DPDR.
Right, DPDR. It's a dissociative condition that is split into two distinct halves based on the source material. The first half is depersonalization.
Okay.
This is the internal shift. It's defined as feeling detached from your own body, your thoughts, or your feelings. You're experiencing yourself as an outside observer.
So your internal landscape feels entirely alien to you.
Exactly.
It's essentially like being violently shoved into a third-person camera mode in a video game.
It's a great way to put it.
You know you're the one pressing the buttons, you know you're making the character walk down the street or type on the keyboard, but you aren't looking out of the character's eyes anymore.
Right, you're hovering 3 feet behind them, just watching them go through the motions.
Yeah, and even your own emotions, like if you start crying, they feel like they are happening to someone else entirely.
What's fascinating here is that analogy captures the mechanical disconnect perfectly. It's a profound detachment from the self.
So that's depersonalization. What about the other half?
Then we have derealization. If depersonalization is about your internal landscape, derealization is about the external landscape.
Okay, the world around you.
Exactly. It's the overwhelming sensation that the physical world around you is unreal, foggy, or dreamlike.
It's like looking at the world through a deeply smudged lens or feeling trapped in a waking dream where the dimensions of a room just feel slightly off.
The colors might seem muted.
Yeah, or the space between you and the wall feels infinitely far away. But here's the thing we really need to clarify. Why does the brain do this?
Because it feels like a glitch.
Right. It feels like your hardware is just completely failing.
Well, what's fascinating here is that this is not a glitch at all. Not even slightly. It is a highly evolved, very specific defense mechanism produced by the brain under extreme conditions.
Wait, a defense mechanism?
Yes. When your brain encounters high anxiety, severe stress, or trauma, it can essentially pull a circuit breaker. Let's look at it like a computer.
Okay, I'm with you.
When a computer is completely overwhelmed by a vicious virus or a system overload, It shuts down all non-essential programs and boots up in safe mode.
Oh, wow. So you only get the basic bare bones graphics.
Exactly. No sound, no high-resolution background.
Ew.
DPDR is the human brain booting into emotional safe mode to survive a system crash.
That is wild.
It distances your conscious awareness from intense emotional pain or fear. It's the mind's way of saying, this reality is just too threatening to process right now, so I am going to put a buffer between you and it.
Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting. If your brain is actively doing this to protect you from stress by zoning out, wouldn't that feel like a massive relief?
You would think so.
Right. If it's a shock absorber, shouldn't it make you feel better or at least kind of numb? Why is being in this emotional safe mode so deeply agonizing for the person experiencing it?
That brings us to the paradox of sanity. This is central to understanding this condition in the source text.
The paradox of sanity.
Yes. The reason it is agonizing rather than relieving is because your reality testing stays completely intact.
Meaning, even though you feel like you're in a dream, you know for an absolute fact that you are awake.
Precisely. You haven't lost your grip on actual facts. If you're experiencing derealization and the room feels like a cardboard movie set, your logical brain still knows it is a real room made of drywall and wood.
So you know you aren't actually hovering behind yourself.
Right. And this creates a massive, exhausting collision in your brain. Your logical prefrontal cortex is saying, I know I am real. I know this room is real.
But your perceptual and emotional centers are just screaming, I feel completely, entirely unreal.
Exactly. You're trapped in the gap between what you logically know to be true and what you're actively, viscerally feeling.
That cognitive dissonance sounds like pure torture. You're essentially a hostage in your own perceptual system.
It really is.
You're fully aware that the system is misfiring, but you can't reach the control panel to fix it. Knowing you aren't crazy doesn't bring comfort. It just makes you hyper-aware of how broken your perception feels.
And it requires an immense amount of mental energy just to exist in that state. And because the sensation of feeling unreal is so terrifying, it creates a vicious feedback loop.
A loop? How so?
Well, DPDR rarely exists in a vacuum. The text mentions it frequently co-occurs with panic disorder, generalized anxiety, and PTSD.
Oh.
You experience a moment of dissociation, which terrifies you. That terror spikes your anxiety and floods your system with cortisol.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Your brain detects this massive spike in anxiety, assumes there's a mortal threat nearby, and decides to protect you by dissociating even harder.
Wow. You panic because you feel unreal. And you feel unreal because you are panicking.
A completely self-sustaining loop of anxiety and dissociation.
So how do we break the loop? If I am caught in this cycle floating outside my body, how do you actually pull me back down?
Right, because it seems like just telling someone, you are real, stop floating, isn't going to do anything.
It definitely won't. You cannot treat the dissociation in isolation, which is a mistake many people make.
Trying to force yourself to stop feeling unreal just focuses your attention on the unreality.
Which causes more anxiety.
Exactly. Evidence-informed care targets the underlying engine that is powering the dissociation, the anxiety and the trauma.
So you have to send a physiological signal to the brain that it is safe enough to turn off safe mode and reboot the full operating system.
What does that actually look like in practice, though? How do we send that stand-down signal to the nervous system?
Well, the primary tool mentioned in the source is cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT.
Okay, CBT.
But we aren't just using it to think positive thoughts. We are using CBT to mechanically restructure the terrifying narratives surrounding the experience.
So when you feel the detachment coming on, your default thought is, I am losing my mind forever.
Right, and that thought activates your amygdala, the brain's fear center.
Yeah.
CBT trains you to intercept that thought and reframe it.
To something like, my brain is just overwhelmed and pulling the circuit breaker to protect me. I am safe.
So you're basically removing the fear of the symptom itself.
Yes. If you aren't afraid of the floating feeling, the brain doesn't get the panic signal, and the loop starts to lose its momentum.
But what about the physical sensation? If my logic is telling me I'm safe, but my body still feels like it's made of static, how do I bridge that gap?
That is where grounding and stabilization skills come in.
Okay, I've heard of grounding.
These are physical, somatic techniques designed to force your nervous system to anchor back into present reality. Your brain is trying to detach from the environment, right?
Yeah.
So you have to give your sensory system undeniable, high-definition proof that you are physically present.
Like the classic 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 technique, or holding a piece of ice.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When you hold an ice cube, The sheer intensity of the cold forces your brain's sensory cortex to prioritize that immediate physical input.
It physically interrupts the amygdala's panic signals.
You're manually overriding the detachment by flooding the system with safe, present-moment data. You are teaching the brain on a neurological level that the current environment is safe enough to re-engage with.
That makes total sense.
And finally, for those whose DPDR is rooted in severe past stress, trauma-focused psychotherapy is critical. The brain learned to use this extreme defense mechanism for a reason.
Right, you have to treat the root, not just the symptom.
Exactly. Until you process the unresolved trauma that built the circuit breaker in the first place, the system will keep tripping. You put out the fire, and eventually the smoke, the dissociation clears.
I want to pivot here because understanding the mechanics of CBT and grounding is great, but it's completely useless if you don't know where to get that treatment.
Access to care is everything.
It is. The bridge between understanding your suffering and actually healing is access to care. And realistically, navigating the mental health care system can be a nightmare that just causes more anxiety.
Oh, absolutely.
But the resources we are exploring in the document provide a blueprint for what accessible care actually looks like. Let's talk about coping and healing counseling, or CHC.
CHC provides a highly effective model for delivering evidence-based care for complex conditions like trauma, anxiety, and dissociation.
We really need to examine their specific logistical structure.
Because it is purposefully designed to dismantle the very barriers that keep people trapped in the dissociation loop.
Let's look at the first major piece of their model. They are a 100% HIPAA compliant telehealth practice serving all 159 counties in Georgia.
Right.
Now, wait a minute. I have to push back on this a little bit.
Okay, go ahead.
If I am suffering from derealization, if the world feels artificial and I already feel disconnected when human beings, isn't staring at a therapist through a digital screen just going to make me feel more detached?
I get why you'd think that.
Wouldn't an in-person physical room be better for grounding?
It is a totally valid question, but let's look at the mechanics of severe anxiety and agoraphobia, which frequently accompany DPDR.
Okay.
For someone in an active state of severe dissociation, the simple act of getting in a car, navigating traffic, sitting in a fluorescent-lit waiting room, and entering an unfamiliar clinical environment is a massive sensory overload.
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
It can easily trigger a worse dissociative episode before they even sit on the couch.
Ah, I see. The journey to the clinic is the trigger itself.
Precisely. By utilizing a telehealth model, CHC allows the patient to engage in trauma processing and grounding skills from the environment where they already feel the most physically secure.
Their own home.
Yes. They control the lighting, the temperature, the chair they are sitting in. They can literally wrap themselves in a familiar weighted blanket while they talk to the therapist.
Yeah, it's huge. It provides a baseline of sensory safety that accelerates the stabilization process.
Furthermore, covering all 159 Georgia counties means someone in a rural area with zero local specialists suddenly has access to top-tier trauma care.
That makes a lot of sense. You're removing the environmental variables that cause the brain to hit the panic button.
Exactly.
And it's not just a generic telehealth platform. The document says they have a diverse, culturally competent team of over 15 licensed therapists.
Right. Licensed clinical social workers, licensed professional counselors, and licensed marriage and family therapists.
When you are trying to unpack the deeply personal, often systemic or generational trauma that causes your brain to dissociate, cultural competence isn't just a buzzword, it is a clinical necessity.
Absolutely.
If you have to spend half your session explaining your cultural baseline to your therapist, you aren't doing the work of healing.
It creates a foundational layer of trust. Without that profound trust, the nervous system will not allow the protective walls of dissociation to come down.
And CHC's scope of services is intentionally broad to catch the various ways trauma manifests. They offer individual therapy, couples therapy, family therapy, and even teen therapy for ages 13 and up.
Because dissociation doesn't just impact the individual.
Right.
It impacts the spouse who feels disconnected from their partner, or the teenager who is struggling to navigate high school while feeling like they're in a dream.
And when you look at the specialties of these clinicians, they are laser focused on the exact roots we discussed earlier.
Right. They specialize in anxiety, depression, trauma, PTSD, grief, relationships, and stress.
It is a concentrated effort to treat the underlying fires. But here is the massive elephant in the room when it comes to American healthcare.
Cost.
Yes. We can talk about how amazing the clinical care is all day, but none of it matters if the patient can't afford it. Financial stress is quite literally a survival threat.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, Financial anxiety is one of the most common triggers for a sympathetic nervous system response.
Absolutely.
If you are thinking therapy for severe anxiety, but the cost of the therapy itself is threatening your ability to pay rent or buy groceries, your brain is going to remain in fight or flight mode.
A therapy practice that causes financial trauma cannot effectively treat psychological trauma.
This is exactly where CHCC's financial accessibility becomes a core part of their clinical intervention.
Let me break down these insurance details from the text because this is where the system actually works for the patient.
Go for it.
If you have Medicaid, your copay with CHC is $0. $0.
That's incredible.
And for commercial insurance, they accept major networks. Aetna, Cigna, Blue Cross Blue Shield, United Healthcare, and Humana. For those commercial plans, the out-of-pocket cost ranges from just $10 to $40 a session.
Think about the physiological impact of that information on a patient.
It has to be massive.
When someone suffering from intense DPDR, who feels utterly hopeless, learns that they can access a trauma specialist from the safety of their bedroom for $0 to $40, their nervous system experiences an immediate parasympathetic response.
Threat level just drops.
They can focus their entirely limited mental energy on grounding, CBT, and healing rather than enduring the agonizing stress of medical debt.
It really is a true blueprint for how we should be treating complex mental health conditions.
Remove the geographical barriers with telehealth across all 159 Georgia counties.
Build a culturally competent team of over 15 licensed professionals.
Target the exact roots of the issue, like trauma, grief, and anxiety.
And utterly remove the financial barriers that keep people locked in survival mode. If you are listening to this and you have been silently suffering through that terrifying detachment, that foggy third-person camera reality, you need to know exactly how to reach out.
Yes, please do.
You can contact Coping and Healing Counseling by calling 404-832-0102. I'm going to say that one more time. 404-832-0102.
And they have online options, too.
Yeah, you can explore their team online at cchitherapy.com or email them directly at support@chichektherapy.com.
The journey out of the fog of depersonalization and derealization is not instantaneous, but it is deeply understood by clinical science.
Your brain learned to build this wall to protect you, and with the right evidence-based tools, your brain can learn how to safely take it down.
Absolutely.
So let's summarize the journey we've taken today. We started with the visceral terror of floating outside yourself or watching the world through a smudged lens.
We demystified it by giving it a name: depersonalization and derealization disorder.
We explored the paradox of sanity, realizing that your intact logic is exactly what makes the emotional safe mode feel so exhausting.
Right, and we learned that to heal, we don't just yell at the smoke.
We put out the fire, using CBT to restructure our fear, grounding techniques to physically anchor our sensory system, and trauma therapy to resolve the root cause.
And crucially, we looked at how practices like coping and healing counseling are actively dismantling the geographical and financial barriers to make that healing a reality for everyone in Georgia.
You are not alone, you're not permanently broken, and you are absolutely not losing your mind.
You know, as we close out this exploration into the incredible mechanics of our own minds, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over.
Oh, I love these. Let's hear it.
We have spent all this time discussing dissociation as a clinical disorder, a defense mechanism triggered by extreme distress. But if our physical brains possess the profound, almost magical ability to literally alter our perception of reality, to bend the physical dimensions of a room, or pull our consciousness out of our own bodies just to shield us from trauma,
Yeah.
what does that tell us about the hidden power of our minds? Is our daily normal experience of reality actually an objective truth?
Oh, wow.
Or is it just a fragile, highly curated construction that our brain only allows us to see when it feels completely fundamentally safe?
Wow. If reality is just what our brain allows us to see when the alarm system is off, that changes how you look at everything.
It really does.
That is definitely a thought that will stay with you long after this ends. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning, keep learning, and remember, the mind is a complex, beautiful, and sometimes overwhelming place. But no matter how far you float, there is always a path back to solid ground. Take care.